All right, Ike. Well, it's been, this is news that's actually a tiny bit old now, but I think important because I guess primarily we're a Land Rover podcast, but I think if we're anything secondarily, we are a Morgan podcast because we seem to talk about the Morgan a lot. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see the photos of our very good friend and contributor to the show, Mr. Nick Dimbleby, has taken some absolutely gorgeous, as is his nature, of the new Morgan Super 3. Which is the three-wheeled, they're not making the old V-twin anymore because I guess that motor, wherever they were sourcing it from, is not made anymore. So this is the new Super 3. This is the replacement of that old car, and one that I want maybe above all things. It is, every time Morgan comes out with a new car, I'm like, I really want it.
One of our customers at the shop is one of the most preeminent Morgan collectors, and he has maybe 30 Morgans, really nice ones, and always like seeing those cars. They're pretty traditional as far as their construction.
Yeah,
I really do enjoy them. Neat to see. I think we got to go to the factory when we visit the UK next time.
Oh, for sure. And the factory tour, and I've seen like some YouTube videos of like drones flying through it and stuff. It apparently like goes down a hill, and like they start the cars at the top of the hill and they sort of move their way down to the bottom of the hill. It sounds like an amazing place, like a magical place. So
I picture it just being a lumber mill.
Yeah,
that's all.
I think it is in many ways, just a big lumber mill. Like a log goes in one side and a Morgan comes out the other. That's
the process starts with like some dude outside the factory just like cutting down a tree with an axe.
They're adjacent to a large wood that they've been replanting over the decades.
Yeah. Well, first they forge the axe and then then they chop down the tree.
It is an incredibly vertically integrated company. Let's just say, Mr. Morgan Sr. Planted those first trees in the 1890s, and now they're reaping the benefit.
It's English ash, I think, is what they used to make them out of.
Yeah.
I think that might have changed with the ash borer.
Yeah, right. With the great ash wars of the 1990s.
Decimated the ash population. We're building a wooden Land Rover right now.
Yeah. How is that going? I saw like a fender photo that you sent me the other day, which is, oh man, it looks so cool. Somewhere between building like a Land Rover and like a fancy armoire. Really looks incredible.
It's neat. Yeah. We're doing the poplar mock-up, finishing that up at the moment and making all of the knives to do the profiles on the various trim. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of work, figuring out all those intersections and construction details and where things should be reinforced and using sort of traditional wooden car methods to make it all work together. There's not really a template for that sort of thing, so it's a pretty fun project.
So, after you're done with it, will there be a pangolin hand-hewed Amish furniture business that'll sprout from this?
Just a hand-hewed Land Rover business.
Oh yeah, you can have all the wooden Land Rovers you want. Yeah, it'd be great. I can't wait.
Dunsfold made a wooden Land Rover 107 like a model. Have you seen that thing?
Yeah. No, it's amazing.
It's pretty cool. I'm
a big fan of wooden Land Rovers. I mean, the Toylander famously is made mostly of wood. It's basically plywood, and they look great. They're fun. In the miniature Land Rovers you can drive category. We were talking, Cooper, my daughter and I, the other night about her Power Wheels Land Rover. We're probably in the final year of utility of that car. As I talked about before, we kind of souped it up so it goes faster now, but it's just a size thing. We're going to get to a point where it's not going to work anymore. So we're talking about now what's the next little Land Rover before. I think the next jump after that is just the 80-inch, because at that point, halfway between a Power Wheels and a real car is the 80-inch. So, we don't have to do much, but maybe a Toylander.
There's a in between stage that you could do, like we talked briefly about the Prince of Jordan,
right? Yeah,
son, his
Hussein, Prince Hussein of Jordan. Yeah, that's and King Hussein of Jordan, obviously huge Land Rover fan. And there's actually what's called King Hussein's bomb hole. Very important to enunciate that, at Eastnor Castle, where they literally just blew up a big hole in the ground, and you drive your car down into it, and then 1 out of 10 times you drive the car back out of it. 9 out of 10 times you winch the car back out of it. But
have you been stuck in the bunghole?
I have not. I actually drove in and out of the bomb hole. No problems with our good friend Rob and Chris that doesn't listen to the show. And I drove through there. And I caught it on a lucky enough day where everything was just sticky enough that I could kind of, tractor my way back up the other side. But many people spend many hours winching themselves out of that hole. And apparently King Hussein would come over to Eastnor quite frequently, and they would blow things up for him, and they would trench new, they'd tractor through new tracks for him and stuff. And he was a big fan, huge fan of the brand. So well,
I think it probably started at an early age.
Yeah, exactly. With tiny little Land Rover. So there you go.
I want to know where that thing is. That thing's really neat. For those of you that haven't seen it, it's pretty impressive.
It is. It is on the internet. You can see great pictures of it. It looks so cool. I mean, I want it real bad. I don't know. Might have to build one. We could build a replica, possibly. We'll get the original drawings. Talk to Michael Bishop. Get the drawings out of the shed and whip one up. Now that you have all these cabinet building skills, maybe we can get you to whip one up. Maybe race car beds. Pangolin 4x4 Land Rover race car beds.
No, Stephen, I'm not making you a Land Rover bed.
I would really like a Land Rover race car bed, please.
No.
I think it's the only thing that I want. So speaking of the photos taken to come full circle by Mr. Nick Dimbleby, we have a tip-top tech tip, and the best part about it is it's not from you or I, because I think everybody is tired of that. It is from the master himself, the maestro of car photography, Mr. Nick Dimbleby.
This is a special one.
Earlier episode.
Yeah.
It's a real one. It's a real tech tip about taking a great photo of your Land Rover. So we'll let Nick take it away.
Hello there, I'm Nick Dimbleby, and I have taken 1 or 2 photographs of Land Rovers in my time. Here's a very quick top tip on how to get the best picture of your Land Rover in a great location. And that top tip is basically the location. You need to find somewhere really cool to put it. And there was a time when someone said to me, a really good car photographer said, "I'm not a car photographer, I'm a landscape photographer. I just happen to put a car in front of it." So that's probably a good tip, as many as I can think of, is just think about that background and let the car sit there nicely.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, if you have an amazing place and you just sort of put a Land Rover in the foreground, it's going to look amazing. So
I think that's a worthwhile photo tip about taking a good picture of your Land Rover. First, take a good picture, and then put your Land Rover
in it. Yeah. It's my approach to taking tasteful nude selfies. Find a great environment and then send it only to you. So
and for those of you at home, you can Google that.
Yeah, it's on there. Ike has set up a fans only. I remember
Stephen bare ass nudes.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great play on words. I think in famous locations around the world. It's great. I think it's building a following slowly but surely.
The Underpowered Hour OnlyFans account is coming soon.
It's going to be great. You just wait.
Yeah.
It's really tasteful. New segment. We get this question all the time for a variety of different models. What to look for when you're buying. And this edition of What to Look For When You're Buying is what to look for when you're buying a series Land Rover. And I think for most individuals that we get asked this question, it's really a Series 2A or a Series 3. Obviously, I think we could probably do a whole separate segment on buying an early series car, 80-inch, 86-inch cars. That's a little different, obviously, because there's not quite the volume of those, especially here in North America, that there are of the 2As and 3s. So, like, what are some of the things that you look for when you are buying a series Land Rover? Because you just bought a bunch, are always, let's be honest, buying a bunch of series Land Rovers.
This is true.
What did you buy, and how do you evaluate those cars?
Yeah, separating the wheat from the chaff, as it were, is a process. And the more you know about the cars and the more you educate yourself, the easier it is to do. Here in North America, the Land Rovers are pretty spread out. It's hard to go see a large number of them, in your local area. So that makes it difficult, and it gives rise to a situation where a lot of people are buying cars off the internet. Mm-hmm. And, they want a Land Rover. They've heard, that they're fun or interesting or unique, and they want one, but there's not, a place locally where they can go check them out. So, there's a few things that you can do to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. And some of these are broad generalizations. And, I'm going to run you through a few things that I look for as red flags, when I'm looking at cars. And,
you're like one of those judges at the Westminster Dog Show where you go over and you lift up one of the legs and you sort of, Ike has a long stick that he prods at things with.
You lift the tail and reach under there and do God knows what. At any rate, the Land Rovers that you look at online, they generally fall into a few categories, but I would say most of them are not very good Land Rovers. Some of the things that you can look for that will make a determination, or at least they make a determination for me, are, if it's right-hand drive. I avoid a lot of right-hand drive cars, and I don't avoid it because I dislike right-hand drive. I actually don't mind it at all. But I would say the majority of right-hand drive vehicles come from the UK, and the vehicles that are exported from the UK are not the cream of the crop. Typically, those are the ones that people want to get rid of, and they send them to Americans because it's difficult for Americans to return them when they're bad.
It's really hard to send them back.
Yeah, it's really hard to send it back. And so they have a long and glorious tradition of sending shitty Land Rovers to Americans, and they love it. And we get stuck with them. Yeah. So, something to know about the UK, if you've never been there, it's damp, like permanently damp.
It's like a swamp. Yeah, it's always,
and it's an island surrounded by salt water. So there's really not a place in England that the vehicle is not going to be damp and salty its entire life. And so most of the Land Rovers that come out of England are really badly corroded. And if they've been repaired, the evidence of that corrosion, the evidence of those repairs is still on the vehicle. And so I think for a long time, Land Rovers, despite their prevalence in the UK, they weren't well restored. In the 80s and the 90s, they were, fixed up on a pretty meager budget. It's only been relatively recently that people have invested a lot of money in really nice restorations. Yeah. And there are some really nice Land Rovers in the UK, but I would say most of the ones for sale online, most of the ones that you see that have already been imported from the UK are not nice vehicles, and I tend to avoid them. When I see that they're from the UK, I can almost count on them having a bunch of weird stuff. Theft is also really common in the UK with Land Rovers. Like, Land Rovers are frequently stolen there, parted out, or shipped overseas. And so you got to be careful with possibly getting a stolen one. And the other thing that happens is a lot of anti-theft equipment is often fitted to Land Rovers there, and some of it's ridiculous. It's like steel boxes that clamp to the pedals, and
the mailbox that goes around the post office box that clamps around your pedals is always fun.
It's insane. It really is. And I ended up with a Land Rover from the UK, and it had 4 separate alarm systems on it, like, just in case, like, the thief disabled 3, there would be a redundant 4th system to make your neighbors go crazy. And it had like pressure switches on the hood and like switches on the doors, and it's a military series 2A, and so it's just got wiring everywhere, and like all these speakers for the alarms, and like it's constantly beeping, and it was terrible. So, those are some of the things that you can look at. If you're just looking at some photos online, you're like, right-hand drive, probably not a good one, unless you've got some other, information about it. But I would say, 99 out of 100 trucks from the UK are not worth owning. And then the other thing you look for
agree.
is trucks from South America or Santanas. That's another thing to look out for. The real early Santanas are not bad. They're really similar to their British counterparts. So those late 50s and early 60s Land Rovers, they're virtually identical to the British product. It's just a CKD basically built under license in Spain. Yep. And those cars are fine. And Spain is a much better climate, generally speaking, than the UK, and they're left-hand drive. So those cars are maybe a little better, but it's difficult to separate those early Santanas from their later Santana counterparts. And for a lot of people, that really affects the value. Those Santana cars, as they progress forward in time, they start to diverge more and more from their British-made counterparts, and they get weird. They lose their scuttle vents and they get fiberglass tops.
Series 3 is so weird. It's so different. In fact,
Series
there's
4.
actually Series 4. The late ones are kind of interesting because it's like Santana kept developing the car when Land Rover sort of stopped. And so there's a lot of things on there where you think like, well, this is probably something Land Rover would have done if they didn't sort of, kind of abandon the series cars and move towards Defender. And then finally, even with Defender, just sort of stop innovating.
Sure. No, absolutely. And, some of those things that Santana did are neat. They made good quality parabolic springs. They made their own overdrive. They upgraded the transmission. They did, a 6-cylinder, 2.25 based engine. They did a lot of neat stuff, but the problem with all of those cars is parts availability. So as they start to diverge from the British models, the amount of locally made content increases. And so like all the electrical system is totally different. A lot of the mechanical stuff starts to be different. They have funky axles, but they have like interesting things like disc brakes, and they have power steering. But as those vehicles start to become 40, 50 years old, it starts to be hard to maintain those and difficult to get parts because they weren't produced in the volumes that the Land Rover product was, and certainly not with the eye to spare parts interchangeability that the standard series has. So, those Santanas, they can make a good vehicle, but their resale value is hampered by that and sort of a reputation for, being difficult to get parts for, and being problematic to maintain. So, I would say as a general rule, avoid the Santanas. And the South American cars, they can be okay, I suppose, but they tend to be repaired in a workman-like way. They're repaired with what's available, and so some of those cars exist because of the ingenuity of some of these local mechanics. But that ingenuity, breeds some repairs that it makes it really difficult to put it back to standard or put it back to stock. So you get some cars that come out of South America. We have them come through the shop periodically, and like everything has changed, like subtly. And in one instance, the steering relay had been damaged, so they welded the steering shaft of another car, I don't know what kind, to the relay arm, and that was welded, and then back to the Land Rover tie rod ends. And so you've got the situation where if you want to fix it, you have to fix like 3 or 4 things. Yeah. And that happens a lot. So they put like a different carburetor on it. And so then you've got to change the throttle linkage, and you've got to change the vacuum advance line, and you've got to change the fuel line and the intake and the air cleaner. And so somebody comes to you with a Land Rover and it's got a worn out carburetor, and it's off of some South American only Citroen, Mahari or whatever. And then you're like, well, if I put the Land Rover carburetor back on it, I have to change all these other things. And so changing the carburetor suddenly goes from being like $500 to like $2,000. So, cars that come out of South America, I typically avoid them for that reason.
Mhm.
So, when you're looking at a specific example, you can kind of rule those things out. If you're asking a seller for photographs, ask them for pictures of the dash, the engine bay, and underneath the car. And then look for rust, look for previous repairs, look for non-standard items. You can find photos of like how the dash should look, how the engine bay should look online. And we can post up some of those pictures on our Instagram, and you guys can check out like what should it look like. Because after 60 years, so many things have been changed, and it's really difficult unless you have that reference to know what's right and what's wrong. And some of those things that you might have to replace to make it right are expensive. So having that reference
for sure. Well, and there's
good.
Great reference material, great books that are out there. You can go on Amazon and look at, the sort of the complete history of the Series 2, the complete history of the Series 3, and they have, really great high quality. I'm a big fan of books as well. You can really get a sort of definitive kind of thing. And it's a fun thing to have with the car too, kind of collect it.
You bring up a good point about having reference material. Certainly there's some things online, some reference that you can find there. But Land Rover actually has really exceptional technical literature, and the parts catalog and the owner's manual and the workshop manual are actually really good. And even if you haven't bought a Land Rover yet, those are really good publications to have in advance of owning one. You can read through those, see how things are supposed to look, how they're supposed to be assembled, how things are supposed to go together. And that will give you a really good sense of what you're looking at when you see a car for sale.
Yeah, and James Taylor does a great. He's probably the one of the leading authorities on the complete history of the X vehicle, and he's really good about pointing out this is the factory spec. This option was available in these regions, and the books aren't expensive. These are not huge. You're talking about buying a vintage Land Rover, so if you're afraid of buying a $50 book, then perhaps a Daihatsu Taft or something would be a better choice.
Those books are. I think James's books are pretty well researched in general, but they have a few things that are not totally 100% accurate. But as a primer, as a guide for the beginner, they're pretty good. And they have a lot of photos, reference photos.
And he's also a great folk musician. What a diverse individual.
I hate to break it to you, but I think Stephen that is a different fellow.
Oh, I'm sure it's the same guy, right?
I'm pretty sure
he's gone into a secondary career of Land Rover research.
I'm pretty sure it's a different guy.
Feels right. I don't know. Well, agree to disagree, I guess. I think you're right though. The pictures that people post, especially online, they always forget the important bits underneath the doors, things like that. Especially, and I often have to have a friend who may not be a Land Rover expert, but simply maybe in the city that a car that I'm looking at is, sort of go and then I'll give them a list of things I'd like them to take pictures of for me. The things that I would look at when it was there. The one issue, and I don't know how you get around this, Ike, but the one issue is, how do you test drive a car? Because you learn so much from a car, taking it, even just driving it around the block.
It's true.
What do you do when you can't? Obviously, if you can be there with that car, you can feel the transmission. You can feel how the gear changes go. If you have an opportunity to quickly lift it up in the air a little bit, you could wiggle the tires up and down, see if you've got hubs that are about to fall off, things like that. But if you're not there, what are you doing if you can't drive the car?
That's a great question, and sometimes it can be difficult to ascertain the mechanical condition. And I think that something that's really helpful is if you can call the owner on the phone and ask the right questions of the owner. Ask them, hey, have you done a compression test, or how many miles have you put on this car? If they're like, I don't really drive it that much, or if they say I haven't driven it very often, or then you kind of get a sense of maybe it's not drivable
because it doesn't drive very good.
And then if you get a sense of I've taken it on some trips, and I've had a life change, or I'm moving, or I'm getting divorced, or whatever, and that's the reason for selling. So asking them why they're selling it, and how they used it, and try to get a sense of what kind of condition it's in. So if somebody's been driving it a lot, taking it on trips, and using it pretty extensively, chances are you probably got a car that's gonna be okay. But
it's unlikely you're doing that if second gear is completely inoperable.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but unlikely.
And you kind of get a feel for, if you chat with a few different people about their cars, what, makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and start to ask people, hey, have you done a compression check on it recently? Does it have a lot of play in the steering? You start to get a little specific if you can get an owner that is willing to answer those questions or is knowledgeable about it. And that'll really help. That'll really help. But so many people just buy them off of eBay or bring a trailer, and then they get the car and they're like totally disappointed because there's, this dialogue between the buyer and seller just doesn't happen there. I mean, to a limited extent, maybe you'll exchange a couple emails, maybe you'll get a couple of extra photos. If you find yourself in a position where you really like the car and like everything seems to check out, consider, maybe that the vehicle is just everything that you can't see. Just consider that it's in bad condition, and
assume
then
that it's no good. Yeah.
Assume that it's no good, and then just pay according to that. And you might not get, 10 cars, but maybe you'll get that 11th car. And that's, just be persistent, ask questions, do your research, talk to other enthusiasts. I think that really helps get a sense for what's right and what's wrong. But sometimes really good cars sell for not very much, and sometimes terrible cars sell for a lot. Speaking of terrible cars that are selling for a lot, have you seen that green Series 2A wagon that's for sale online right now?
I have seen the green 2A wagon. It is it's actually like a great study. We maybe even post a link, although I don't necessarily want to steer people towards it. But it is worth looking at as a study of all of the things to look for in a car that has gone so very wrong. Starting with the fact that the hood sits, open by a good inch and a half.
Possibly 2 inches. All the time. I mean, here's a car that is described as being amazingly and lovingly restored. A red flag in any advertisement for a car is like when they start talking about the history of the marque and like how Land Rovers have like roamed the wild places of the earth and all this stuff, but it doesn't tell you anything about the specific car. 9 times out of 10, that car is overpriced or is a terrible car. And in this particular instance, they describe it as having been, restored and modified by like, a high-end professional shop in Southern California. And it has an LS motor in it, and it has, I can't remember what transmission it has in it, but has disc brakes, and it has power steering, and it has all of these features that people really want in a car. And the pictures are sort of at sunset, and they're like, definitely intending
lower. They're lower light than you would.
It's like an old pornographic film where the lady's like not that good looking and soft.
I once traded in a completely bombed out car, literally in the middle, almost the middle of the night. We went at the very last second of the day to just dump this car on the dealer, and it's like I feel very much like it's in the same thing. Like that puddle underneath it, that was there before we got there. We just parked in the puddle. That's all. It's nighttime. Just let's go. You guys want to go?
So when you look at the photographs,
all that oil
of this
certainly
car,
didn't come from me.
When you look at the photographs of this car, you're like, it's presented pretty well, and they have like several paragraphs talking about how wonderful this car is, how incredible it is, and how it's been part of this amazing, collection by this high-end collector and so forth. And you start to look at the pictures, and you're like, it doesn't look quite right. And then you look a little more, and then you just keep seeing things that are terrible. And so in this particular example, like there's a few pictures of underneath the car, and like the welds that hold the power steering on are just really bad. And the hood doesn't quite close, and the body doesn't line up, and it's got a lot of like dents and bondo and all this stuff. But I guess on the bright side, for this particular car, they're only asking $190,000.
It's worth every cent. I'll tell you what, that LS, that's it's $180,000 LS motor in a $10,000 Land Rover. Even a $10,000 Land Rover, that's being very generous. So
I wouldn't pay that because I think it would probably kill you if you drove it.
That's a murder wagon for sure. I mean, here's the thing. I have mixed feelings, on, and obviously Joe, with LS swapping Defenders and Series 2s and things, are talking about that. I think if you go from the ground up and you build the cars, people do that certainly, and there's a sort of right way to kind of get away with it. I know, good friend of Liza's has an LS swapped 110. It's a Santana 110, but it's amazing. I mean, I think the car did cost about $180,000 to do it, but it was done absolutely properly. Like, I mean, that's maybe not my thing. If I had every other Land Rover in the world, would I want one? Sure, it's super fun. But I've also driven ones that are like death machines. They don't stop. They don't turn.
Sure.
They go really fast in a straight line, which is almost worse than if they didn't, because you can't stop them. You can't turn them. And I just don't know. I mean, some people are into it, but man, sometimes they're just, really feels dangerous to be anywhere near it.
You got to be careful with converted vehicles. There's very few of them that are done well, and by and large, most of them have not been done well. The welding is typically not up to a high standard, and driveline angles and vibrations and these sorts of things that converted vehicles suffer from frequently. I'm not against conversions. I just think that most of them are not well thought out or well done.
Yep.
And
I think I've seen one good one. Yeah.
One good one.
Yeah, this is not a good one. I've seen one good one. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So,
and I've seen more than one.
Add that to the list of red flags, that it invites closer scrutiny to those vehicles for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's super helpful, and I think we'll continue this series of what to look for. We'll go through some of the newer cars. Maybe we will circle back to the 80-inch, the very early cars, sort of what to look for there for those individuals interested in that. But speaking of janky ass Land Rovers on the internet, let's talk about some janky ass Land Rovers on the internet in a new segment that we're calling Land Rovers on the internet. Interesting Instagram accounts, YouTube channels that you should check out because they've been around for a long time and are cool, or they're fairly new and have some neat content. So this week, 2 Instagram accounts that I find, of course, in addition to Pangolin 4x4, the greatest Land Rover Instagram account of all time. Island Rovers. I don't know if you're familiar, with Conrad out there in the island of Jersey, not Jersey, not New Jersey, but original Jersey, the island of Jersey. He has a great Instagram account and YouTube channel, and actually some really neat gear and stuff on his website, and does some great Insta 360 videos, some fun YouTube reels and things like that. And you can find Conrad's stuff at Island Rovers on Instagram, and he's super fun. I really like his spirit. He's got a 5180 inch. He has a number of different classic Defenders, as well as he's done some stuff with a new Defender, and has a supercharged Range Rover. Lots of stuff, and interesting. Does some adventuring stuff, and it's a pretty cool channel.
Neat. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, you have to check it out. And then Land Rover Sophie. I don't know if you're familiar with Land Rover Sophie, but she is in the UK and is restoring a Discovery, a 2-door Discovery, amongst other things. She has a Series 3. She also has a Defender. Also has a YouTube channel, Land Rover Sophie, where she is sort of learning the process of Land Rover restoration, process, art, curse, whatever you want to call it, of Land Rover restoration. It does some really cool stuff, and hers is a fun account because she's just sort of figuring some of this stuff out, and isn't a long-standing master restoration shop in Germany that knolls out all their parts like it's a Lego set, but instead is sort of very much backyard sort of mechanic restoration, which I think is probably a lot more like a lot of people are doing.
I'm looking at it right now, and she actually has an engine laid out like a bunch of Legos, and it's an Aston Martin V12. So maybe you haven't looked at it.
Yeah, I think she's now. So she was an undertaker's assistant or something at some point, but always loved Land Rovers and decided that she was going to start restoring one, and now I believe works as a as a mechanic of some kind. Really would love to have her on the show, actually. She seems like a super fun person to talk to, and I would love to know the transition from Undertaker's assistant to Land Rover mechanic, because maybe I can do the transition the other way. I've always been interested in the mortuary sciences. So
that sounds like you're cursed by something. Like you're working on a corpse and you're cursed, and then you end up restoring Land Rovers for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it was like
wrong.
a gypsy that she was restoring. Yeah, exactly. You've done something wrong. Monkey's paw situation, I think.
Yeah.
So most likely what's
definitely get a curse
what's
that
happened.
You have to live with. Well, I'm sorry for her.
And then
I have to live with that.
Yeah, it's too bad. Maybe the Undertaker thing isn't completely out of the picture. Maybe she can always circle back to that. I'm sure much more lively set of clientele there. And for those people who haven't seen the Trailer Fitters Toolbox or Land Rover Toolbox videos on YouTube, those are classics, and that guy is a ton of fun. And in the old British tradition of sort of bodging together your Land Rover wheel hubs or something. His videos are great. I've always enjoyed those. So if you have an interesting Instagram account or you have a YouTube channel that you really love, why not drop into our DMs over on Her Majesty's Instagram and let us know, and we'll check it out, and we'll talk about it here on the show, and try to get that Land Rover magic spread all over liberally like wheel bearing grease all over the inside of Instagram. Cooper and I were greasing wheel bearings for the Defender recently, and she's decided that wheel bearing greasing is not something she really enjoys doing. But she did one, and it was, we got her gloves on, and she was doing it. I have like the greasing cone, so that it's a little bit more efficient when you're doing mini wheel bearings than packing them by hand. But it's still very goopy, and there's a little colonoscopy kind of action going on when you're taking that bearing out of there.
Is that why you're so excited about it?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I have to say, it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite activities.
I don't know if you listeners at home know this, but one time I went to Steven's shop and I caught him greasing wheel bearings with his tongue.
That's what I do. Yep, it's a special biodegradable. That's my special technique. My special technique, like magic. I'm going to tell you, don't knock it until you tried it. So to end off this rousing week of the Underpowered hour, Land Rovers in the movies. This is actually one I haven't seen, but an actor who is without question a huge fan of the Land Rover, and an actor without question that I am a huge fan of, Mr. The Steve McQueen. Never So Few, a film with Richard Bronson and Frank Sinatra.
Charles.
No? Is he not
Charles
in
Bronson?
Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson. Frank Sinatra. Charles Bronson.
Frank Sinatra.
Gina Lollobrigida. You're terrible. At any rate, this is a classic film. It's a war movie, and it's an early Steve McQueen movie, and he plays a rowdy go-getter. And in this particular movie, there's a very interesting Land Rover that they drive, and it's featured on some of the movie posters. And if you look closely, it's an 80-inch. But it's been stretched to like maybe 106 inches or something like that, and it has like almost maybe a wooden body on the back. It's pretty neat. It's a pretty interesting car. It sort of predates.
Why did they stretch it? What was the purpose of stretching it?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that it was stretched for the film. It may have been stretched at a time before Land Rover actually offered a pickup or a long wheelbase model. And so they're like, we want a Land Rover, but we also want it to be long wheelbase, so we're going to stretch it. So it has some interesting body work. It appears in the movie a few times. Pretty neat. And it's in some classic Hollywood, heavyweights in that film.
Yeah. Of course, Charles Bronson. Richard Branson's brother.
Richard
A lot of people don't know that.
Branson.
A lot of people don't know
Richard
that.
Branson.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
Charles Bronson is Richard Branson's brother. A lot of people don't know that. But at some point, like, we might want to do like a Steve McQueen episode. Obviously, you own one of Steve McQueen's Land Rovers, and Steve McQueen is not just a big fan of Land Rovers, but most of his movies have Land Rovers in them. I think probably because he is such a big fan, and just a great guy. So maybe we'll do an Underpowered Hour movie night, and we'll talk. We'll record a podcast, and you can watch one of Steve McQueen's movies with our podcast in the background, just like Mystery Science Theater. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be fantastic. Maybe we'll live stream it, and we'll get in huge trouble from the Steve McQueen estate. We'll be sued out of existence. That would be a fun way to go out, and probably appropriate given the content overall of this show. So, Ike, as we come to a close here again, check out the Underpowered Hour store. We've got some new stuff going up there. Some really cool stuff coming up very soon. Some neat collaborations with some of your favorite Land Rover people. Check us out on again Her Majesty's Instagram, where we're rolling along there as always. The greasy wheel bearing of Instagram as always, and YouTube. If you were interested in in staring at Ike and I while you listen to this, I don't know who would want to do that, but if you do, please head on over there. We've got stuff going up there, and some new stuff coming up there pretty soon as well. And as always, if you would like to get some exciting extras like Ike and I's workshop vlogs, which are on the Patreon, head on over there and become a patron and get ad-free episodes as well as special content and even some special contests.
That's
some
true.
Very
That's true.
Exciting draws.
You'll get to see Steven greasing a wheel bearing.
wheel bearing techniques for greasing your wheel bearings. It is it's an acquired sort of art, but once you get on it, it's about the right amount of of squeeze pressure to make sure that you appropriately fill in the gaps. Yeah,
hard pass.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's up to you, So, unfortunately, we have, due to the amount of wheel bearing greasing content in this episode, run out of time to talk about the greasy wheel bearing of Piri Piri Chicken Nando's. So we're going to have to skip the review this episode and get to that in the near future here. We apologize to the fine people at Nando's again this week for not getting to that. And in the meantime, Ike, keep it between the ditches, and good luck out there. And we'll see you next week.
All right, Steven. See you on the trail. Take care.